Impossible, Lieutenant Commander Masao Hara muttered on the morning of July 22, 1944, staring through binoculars from the tree line of Tinian Island. Where dense sugarcane fields had stood only days before, a raw strip of pale coral now cut across the landscape, flat, straight, and already humming with engines. American aircraft were landing, not scouting, landing. 3 days earlier, that ground had been held by the 50th Infantry Regiment of the Imperial Japanese Army, its officers confident that even if the Americans took the beaches, they would need weeks, perhaps months, to build usable airfields. That belief was doctrine. It was also wrong. The sound reached the Japanese positions first, a low, constant grinding, bulldozers chewing coral, steel tracks scraping rock. It did not stop at night. It did not slow under mortar fire. It simply continued, hour after hour, until the island itself seemed to be reshaped. The men responsible wore faded dungarees, not medals. They were the U.S. Navy construction battalions, the Seabees, many of them former construction workers from Ohio, Texas, and California. On July 24, 1944, just 6 days after the invasion of Tinian, Seabees of the 18th and 121st Naval Construction Battalions declared the first airstrip operational. Fighters landed that same afternoon. Japanese Major Kenji Tokunaga wrote in his diary that night, "The enemy builds airfields the way others pitch tents." To understand the shock, one must understand Japanese planning. Island defenses were calculated around time to bleed the invader, time to delay logistics, time to deny air superiority. On paper, coral islands were a curse to engineers. Too hard to dig, too uneven to pave, too exposed to construct under fire. American doctrines shattered that logic. The Seabees did not pour concrete at first, they crushed coral. Using CB-built rock crushers, they reduced the island itself into a compacted runway surface known as coral fill. The material was sharp, white, and blinding under the sun. Men worked shirtless despite the danger, skins split and bleeding, coral dust clogging lungs and eyes. On Saipan, weeks earlier, the pattern had already begun. After the landings on June 15, 1944, Japanese artillery observers believed they had accurately mapped likely airfield sites. They shelled them relentlessly. It did not matter. By June 21, the Seabees had repaired a Sleto airfield captured intact from the Japanese and renamed it Eastleigh Field. 2 days later, P-47 Thunderbolts were taking off to bomb Japanese positions still fighting in the hills. Colonel Satoshi Nakagawa of the 43rd Division reportedly asked a captured Okinawan laborer how long the Americans had been on Saipan. 6 days, came the answer. Nakagawa refused to believe him. The psychological effect was devastating. Japanese soldiers had been trained to endure air attacks as a prelude, something temporary before ground combat resumed. But now, the air never left. Planes took off, landed, refueled, and returned within minutes. The sky belonged entirely to the enemy, and it had happened almost overnight. On Peleliu, after the landings of September 15, 1944, Japanese defenders of the 14th Infantry Division expected the jagged coral ridges to delay any serious air operations. Yet within 48 hours, Seabees began leveling ground near the beachhead. By September 26th, Fighter Strip No. 1 was operational. Japanese artillery tried to knock it out nightly. Each morning, the strip was repaired before dawn. A Seabee from the 33rd Naval Construction Battalion later recalled, "They bombed it at midnight, we landed planes on it at breakfast." For Japanese officers watching from caves and ridgelines, the realization was not just tactical, it was existential. They were not fighting an army that adapted slowly. They were fighting an industrial system that arrived fully formed, carrying its own cities, factories, and infrastructure with it. On Iwo Jima, even before the island was declared secure, Seabees went to work. The invasion began on February 19, 1945. The volcanic ash swallowed vehicles. Boots sank ankle-deep, and the air smelled of sulfur and cordite. Japanese General Tadamichi Kuribayashi had designed his defense to maximize attrition, confident that American losses would be catastrophic. Yet by March 16, 1945, Motoyama Airfield No. 1 was operational. On March 4th, even earlier, a damaged B-29 Superfortress made an emergency landing, saved by a runway that Japanese planners never believed could exist so soon. Kuribayashi, before his death, reportedly told a subordinate, "They do not fight like men, they fight like machines." But that too missed the truth. The Seabees were not machines. They were exhausted men working under sniper fire, sleeping in shallow foxholes beside bulldozers, hands blistered raw. They joked to stay sane. They cursed the heat. They wrote letters home with coral dust still in the folds of the paper. What made them unstoppable was not lack of fear, but discipline layered over skill. They knew what those airstrips meant. Every runway shortened the war by miles. Every landing strip meant wounded men evacuated faster, supplies arriving sooner, bombers flying farther. On Tinian, the airfields built by Seabees would soon host the 509th Composite Group. From those runways on August 6th and August 9th, 1945, aircraft would take off that would change the world forever. Japanese officers watching the first bulldozers could not have known that, but they understood something else, something immediate and terrifying. Once the Americans landed, the island was already lost. The speed was not just physical, it was psychological. The ground beneath them was no longer fixed. It could be reshaped, flattened, conquered in days. By late 1944, Japanese field manuals quietly stopped estimating American airfield construction times. The numbers were no longer credible because the airstrips kept appearing. And every time one did, the war moved closer to Japan itself.